So this is Congressman Rod Blum, everybody. He's a member of the Freedom Caucus, and he's doing a lot of great work in D.C., one of the few people who actually does what he says he's going to do in Washington, which I find completely refreshing. Like I was saying before, we were talking a little bit about a lot of the exit polls in this past election said that 76% of voters thought that the media was actually more interested in making money than actually telling the truth. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's a certain amount of truth to that. I think the polls, if we want to talk about polls, have said over the last 3 or 4 months that overwhelming majority of Americans do not trust the major media. And I think a big part of the reason is I'm 61 years old, and I've never seen the media so in the tank for a presidential candidate as they were for Hillary Clinton. I've never seen the media attack a presidential candidate like they did Donald Trump. And I think America realizes that now and recognizes that. And as I said, the overwhelming majority of Americans do not trust, the mainstream media.
Absolutely.
That's why I'm personally glad there's alternative media, especially social media, just like you're doing. I think it's great. And to get the truth out there and get the facts out there. I don't like it when the talking heads say, here's how you should interpret what you just heard.
Yeah.
Here's how you should interpret what this candidate just said. It's like, no, just tell me what the candidate said, and I'll interpret myself.
Absolutely.
And I'll draw my own conclusions of what they said.
People are smart enough to figure that out on their own for the most part.
There's an old saying that the comic pages in the newspaper are for people who can't read, and the opinion pages are for those people that don't think.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, just report the news, major media, please. Just report it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll draw our own conclusions.
Absolutely. Well, hey, for some of the people in my audience who may not be super familiar, what are some of your big initiatives in Congress, and what are you hoping to do now that you've won re-election?
Well, they remain the same. When I ran 2 years ago, I always told people if you want more of the same, if you like the direction the country's heading 2 years ago, if you want the ruling class, the political class, the career politicians in Washington to tell you how to run your small business or run your life, vote for my opponent. If you want somebody that's going to go to Washington, D.C. That believes in the power of the individual versus the power of government, if you want somebody that's going to try to give you back some liberty and some freedom that's been taken from you by the government, if you want somebody that will stand up to the special interest groups and stand up to my own party. I'm a Republican, and I stood up to the Republican Party, then send me. And they sent me, and it's exactly what I did. And you said in the intro here that I actually did what I said I would do.
Yeah.
And my first vote was against the then Speaker of the House, John Boehner, because that's what I promised people in my district I would do, is I would vote for change there in my own party. So I have stood up to my own party, voting against the Speaker at the time, John Boehner. I voted against the Bipartisan Budget Act because it blew through the spending caps. I voted against the omnibus in 2015 because it blew through the spending caps, against my own party's wishes.
Yeah.
And but then conversely, I've also, when it makes sense for Iowa in my district, I voted for the education bill. I voted for the surface transportation bill, which is the highway bill. I voted for the 21st Century Cures Act, which adds another $8 to $9 billion in funding for research and development to find cures for diseases like Alzheimer's and cancers. So the bottom line is I own my voting card. I haven't turned it over to the Republican Party. I haven't turned my voting card over to special interests. The voters of Eastern Iowa own my card, and I always vote what's in the best interest of Eastern Iowans and then what's in the best interest of Americans. And I don't march to anybody's drum in Washington, D.C.
Sounds good. So you'd say fiscal conservatism is one of your biggest focuses in Congress?
Absolutely. Yeah. We need more of that. We're approaching 20 trillion with a T in debt. Our annual interest is about $260 billion a year. We're spending in interest payments at record low interest rates. When interest rates normalize, when they normalize to go back to 4 or 5%, federal government's interest bill will be $600-700 billion at the current amount of indebtedness. That's frightening.
So that would be the biggest portion of the budget that it would be allocated to, right?
Just to put it in perspective, we spend around $700 billion a year on Social Security. We spend about $900 billion a year on defense. So we'd be spending almost that much on interest alone. This year, our deficit is $590 billion, $600 billion in a year, and it's never mentioned. I mean, I bet your average citizen does not realize that. It's never mentioned. It wasn't hardly mentioned in the debates. And as Admiral Mullen said, who was the former chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, when asked what was the biggest threat to America, he didn't name a foreign country. He said the biggest threat to America is our debt. And I couldn't agree more. You know, most great civilizations, most great countries crumble from within, and we've seen that through history. America is heading to a bad place unless we get this debt and spending under control. And I just think it's immoral what we're doing to our children and grandchildren, putting this kind of debt on their backs. And what it does is a drag on the economy, having this much debt. And we can see now our economy's growing at 1% this year, and average is about 3.5%. In fact, this is going to be the first president in United States history, in U.S. history, going back to George Washington, that has not had a single year of GDP growth, real GDP growth, greater than 3%. We haven't had one in the last 8 years. And this is why people's wages are stagnant. This is why working families and the middle class in this country are not getting ahead. They're falling behind because our economy is subpar. So we need to reignite the economy. And one of the solutions is to get our spending under control.
Would there be something that an omnibus bill would have to look like for it to get the Rod Blum stamp of approval? Like, what would that entail?
Well, you know, it's like, the spending, the spending caps. We blew through the spending caps last year. And I think Americans, I hear it all the time. I know Americans, Eastern Iowans say, we got to quit this hemorrhaging of spending at the federal level. And the debt we just talked about 3 minutes ago. And this is where it happens. This is how it happens. I don't like omnibus bills. It's bad government. What they do is they roll all of the 12 spending bills into one bill. It's multiple thousands of pages long. It has thousands of great ideas in it and good things, and probably thousands of bad things in it. And you get a yes vote or a no vote. And as members of Congress, we don't have a line item veto, and neither does the president. So we can't go through there and pick and choose. So we just get one vote on this. Yes or no, and that's bad government. I don't like that, and we need to stop that. And Speaker Ryan agrees, and so going forward in the next session, I look forward to debating in an open and transparent way the 12 spending bills that we need to approve every year in Congress, and being able to offer amendments and vote each one of them up or down, as opposed to a multiple thousand-page omnibus. So I'll just look at the total spending, and we'll see where that's at.
Sure.
Like I said, there's bound to be thousands of great ideas in it, good things, and thousands of bad things in it. And you just got to look at it overall. Absolutely. And we'll also see what President-elect Trump has to say. Sure. We have a new leader, sheriff in town. Oh, yeah. And Speaker Ryan was the highest-ranking Republican, and now it's President-elect Trump. So we'll see what he says about the omnibus bill. If he gives it a thumbs up or thumbs down, that will weigh in my decision as well.
All right. So you would say you'd much rather, debate the individual 12 different spending bills than just a massive omnibus that we've had?
This coming legislative session, starting here in 2017, will be going through the appropriations bills for 2018, because this omnibus is going to cover 2017. We need to do it the right way. We need to get back to what's called regular order, and that's good government. I always say it's worked for 240 years, and we need to get back to it because it works, and we just need to follow the rules.
Sure. So basically just Congress doing its job then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And, it's like, Harry Reid in the Senate, he blocked bringing these things up. House passed, I think, 5 appropriations bills. And the Senate never really took them up. So, because they know they typically want it all in one bill and have an up or down vote. And that's what they prefer. But now I hope President-elect Trump says let's get back to regular order and do them individually. Sure. It matters a lot who's in the White House. It matters a lot.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Who would you say are some of your key allies in Congress, and who do you think is someone you've always wanted to collaborate with?
Oh, I have many. First thing that comes to mind is our Iowa delegation, as far as key allies. So Senator Ernst, Senator Grassley. Obviously, if there's anything like the WRDA bill, the Cedar Rapids Flood Wall Project, those are my first calls to those 2 senators. And then, the Iowa delegation, Congressman Young, Congressman King, and Congressman Loebsack. We all get along great. And, Dave Loebsack's a Democrat, and I get along with Dave just wonderful. Yep. So those are allies on any issue that impacts Iowa. And then, beyond that, it just depends on what the issue is.
Sure.
Because our work's done in committees. And so, it depends what the bill is and which committee it's coming from. I know people on every committee anymore. So
Sure.
It just depends. I don't have any key
Yeah.
allies. I know people, I know the speaker well, Paul Ryan and Leader McCarthy and Whip Scalise and Kevin Brady from Texas is chair of the Ways and Means Committee. Very powerful committee. We get along wonderfully. So, Jeb Henserling's chair of the Financial Services Committee. Trey Gowdy and I have gotten to be friends on the Oversight Committee. You just work with these people in committees and you get to know each other better. So I'd say I have lots of allies, and I know lots of the Democrats as well.
I think you've mentioned in the past that you and Thomas Massie are friendly. So I was wondering if you two have anything planned in the future.
Yeah, we have. It's kind of funny. Massey's on the third floor of Cannon House office building. His office is 314. And I'm 213, so I'm pretty much right underneath him. And then right underneath me in Cannon is Justin Amash.
Oh, there you go.
So we're lined up pretty much on 3 floors above and below each other. So we call ourselves the Pillar of Liberty in Congress, and it's just kind of cool how that all worked out. But Thomas Massie and I have gotten to be very, very good friends, and Justin Amash as well. But I've probably gotten to know Thomas better.
Yeah.
And he's a great guy, very smart guy, MIT grad, and but a fellow businessman. So we hit it off immediately. His friendship and mine will last beyond Congress. There's no doubt in my mind. So I really enjoy Thomas. He's always got a smile on his face, and he's always got a unique perspective on whatever it may be in Congress. And if I'm having a bad day, I see Thomas Massie. He makes me smile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear.
He and Justin are obviously champions of liberty. And it's always good to get their perspective on. I'll talk to them often about their take on bills.
Sure. Would you put yourself in that category as well? Do you think there's any chance you would ever join the House Liberty Caucus?
Sure. There's a chance I would. I consider myself, a champion for freedom, for liberty. There's no doubt. And I think the government every day chips away at our Bill of Rights, chips away at our freedom, chips away at liberty, and I hate to see that. And I've been allies of Justin and Thomas on the reauthorization of the Freedom Act. I was a no vote on that because I'm a real stickler on making sure that the government's not spying on us. Yeah. And so we try to limit that, as the three of us do, as much as possible. Absolutely. And that act. It didn't allow for the NSA to store metadata, on government computers, so that was a good thing. But it also it allowed warrantless searches of your communications, and you could get a warrant 7 days later. I mean, that's to me not constitutional. And then it also lowered the bar to get a warrant, for example, from probable cause, which is right in the Constitution, to reasonable suspicion. And just to be able to say, I can search somebody without a warrant because I get 7 days here. I can search somebody's cell phone records because I have a reasonable suspicion they might be doing a terrorist activity. No, it's not good enough. So I was a no vote along with Amash and Massey on bills like that. So I'm very concerned about privacy issues when it comes to our government.
Yeah, no, that would open the door for all sorts of misuse and abuse of the system, wouldn't it?
Oh yes, yes, and I think it was. I think it was Franklin maybe that said, that people willing to give up their liberty and their freedom and to trade it for security shall have neither and deserve neither. And, I couldn't agree more. I always say this is America. We should be able to have our liberty and freedoms protected and have security both. But so many people are willing to trade in their liberties and freedoms for, this promise of we'll keep you safe if we can just spy on you. Yeah. And I totally do not agree with that.
Building on that, you worked on a major whistleblower protection bill, didn't you?
Yes.
Would you go over some of the main features of that?
Yes, and it passed in the House, and it's stalled in the Senate. Ron Johnson, who got reelected, that's good news. It's in his committee. So when I get back on Monday, I'm going to find out where that's at, and hopefully it can make it into the omnibus. But what it did is it renewed the Whistleblower Act and strengthened the Office of Special Counsel, who are assigned to federal employees who whistleblow, to protect them. And we need more whistleblowers in the federal government, not less. And people will not come forward and tell us when things are being done incorrectly or maybe even illegally in some cases. They won't come forward if they feel like they're going to be terminated or punished.
Sure.
So we need to make sure as a government we protect anybody that comes forward and as a whistleblower. So my bill would strengthen the Whistleblower Act, reauthorize it, and reauthorize the Office of Special Counsel. So I'm hopeful it'll make it in the omnibus, and if not, we'll reintroduce it and go at it again next session.
Sure.
But we need more whistleblowers, not fewer. You just look at the VA system and the abuses in the VA system of some of our veterans. And some of the whistleblowers that have come forward in the VA system across the country have been punished, terminated, reassigned. Yeah. I mean, that's just not right. And we can't have people fearing that.
Absolutely. So that would just offer protections to people who found abuses in the system or illegal activity, or what's the criteria that they would have to meet to get that protection?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So it is illegal.
If they come forward and say there's an abuse, there's I mean, it's you get down to the lower level. It's like, well, I don't think we're doing this right.
Sure.
That's not really doesn't come to the level of a whistleblower. But if they say, we're doing something illegal, we're doing something against the law, or we're, there was a guy that worked in the VA kitchen in Philadelphia at a VA hospital, and he said came forward and said we have an infestation of insects in the kitchen, and he was reassigned to the morgue. He really was reassigned to morgue duty because he did that. Now, it's just like, I guess it's not illegal to have an infestation, but it is breaking codes, it's breaking regulations. And it's like, we need more of that, not less of that in the government.
Absolutely. Well, this is a little change of topic, but a lot of conservatives would probably lament the destruction of our military, despite the fact that we spend a lot more on military than most of any other countries in the world. Do you think that in order to improve our military, we'll have to expand our military budget, or do you think that reallocation of resources and priorities would get the job done just fine?
Well, the military has taken it on the chin since we had the sequestration and the budget and the budget caps.
I know a lot of people have issues with the sequestration bills and such.
Yes, so I mean, there's been actual reductions in our military, and I think we'd all agree the world is probably as less safe as it's ever been. And so the military budget has really been hit. But I'll be the first to say, is there waste in the military? Well, of course there is. There's waste in every government agency. Yeah. And as a business person, I can see that maybe a little bit easier than some of the professional
probably just eats at you, doesn't it?
So I mean, the Defense Department needs to be as efficient as they possibly can be, obviously. But defense is always tough. Because the legislators there in Congress, we're not generals in the military, and we need to be able to execute 2 wars at the same time is our standard at different places in the world. And I think I spoke to the generals. We're reaching the point where that's becoming somewhat iffy if we can execute 2 wars at the same time. So we cannot fall below that standard. And it's technology. Is our friend, for our Defense Department, but it's not cheap. Yeah. So we need to, freedom's not cheap. Yeah. So we need to take care of our veterans who have secured our freedom for us. Some of them have paid the ultimate sacrifice. And we need to make those investments in technology, particularly in the military, and not be building outdated tanks, not be building outdated things to fight war the way we used to 50 years ago. I mean, things have changed so much. I mean, a lot of the warfare now is going to be cyber warfare. Yeah. And our system's hacked into, and we saw that with WikiLeaks. When we talk about warfare now, it's changed so much. Now we have terrorism and guerrilla warfare that are fought in the urban streets of distant cities. Okay, that's a different type of war than World War II. Sure. And also now we have cyber war with computers and databases and computing in the cloud. So, it's like what we're spending the money on, we need to be modernized. So you think that we should spend a lot more on resources to combat cyber terrorism? Oh, yes, on cyber terrorism, correct. Sure. But doesn't mean it has to be an overall budget increase. I mean, we could, should we be building a tank? I don't know how often tanks are used in warfare anymore. Yeah. Versus, adding additional brilliant minds to fight cyber terrorism. Sure. Yeah. So that's a good question. So you would say that we need reallocation of some resources, and
and such, right?
Possibly. I'm not. See, I'm not on the military committee.
Sure.
And so armed services, I'm not on that committee. That's where the detail work gets done.
Sure.
And I don't pretend to be a military expert. So I just look at the top line of the military budget and taking care of our veterans. We need to make sure we take care of our veterans, honor the promises that we made to them. And once again, the military has taken the brunt of the sequestration cuts. So it'll be great to have President-elect Trump in there, and I'd like to see him do a military review top to bottom. But let's modernize it as well.
So do you think that you would support, if it came up in Congress, an audit of the Pentagon or the military?
Well, it should be audited every year. Yeah. And
because I know that now
GSA that does the audits, General Services Accounting, in the government, they said it's so messed up they can't audit it.
Yeah, that's what
they can't audit it. Yeah. Now that's bad. I mean, every major corporation out there that's public is audited every year. Every year. I mean, so certainly the government that's spending $4 trillion of taxpayer money, every agency should be audited every year. And they say they can't audit the Defense Department. That's an issue. That needs to change. Defense Department needs to be audited. Going
back to some of the House procedural processes, I've heard some rumblings that a lot of the honeymoon period with House Speaker Paul Ryan might be coming to an end for a lot of conservatives. So roughly a year after Ryan's taken the Speaker's gavel, how do you think you would rate his performance as leader of the House GOP?
Oh, I think it's a tough job.
Sure.
There's no doubt. It's like I said. It's like herding 435 cats. Try doing that. And every person in the House, for the most part, these are bright people. And they know the issues, and they each have a vision for the country, just like I do. And no two visions probably match. So it's not an easy job, and I think things will be much better. They got much better under Paul Ryan than John Boehner.
Sure.
Paul's a breath of fresh air, and he gave us all a voice and let our voices be heard. And under the former speaker is very top down, very authoritarian type of management style, and we need to be more of a bottom up organization. Absolutely. And Speaker Ryan has set a lot of those types of things in action. So that's good, and I think he'll be more effective, and we'll be more effective now that we have the White House. And the leadership will come from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and President-elect Trump will set the agenda and say, I want these things done, and then we'll set to go to work on producing those things for him. Totally different than having Barack Obama in the White House, and what we're doing is playing a lot of defense.
Yeah. What would you consider some of his Paul Ryan's better accomplishments, and what do you think are some areas that he could probably improve as Speaker?
Oh, I just said his biggest accomplishment is we all had a voice and have a voice, and he set up 6 working committees to come up with a better.gop. You may have heard about that.
Sure.
And one is welfare reform, one is healthcare reform, one is get the economy, reignite the economy. 6 different areas. And we could participate in every committee, or we could participate in none. It was up to us. So that was wonderful. And we had numerous meetings each committee did. So we could show up and give our input. And this is wonderful. That some of my ideas went into the welfare reform package, or ideas, if you will. And that's a good feeling. So, the best thing he's done is bottom up, is let all of us have a voice again. And he's a Wisconsin guy, and so you cannot not like Paul Ryan personally. He's a good guy, and so that's been a breath of fresh air. It's not an easy job. What we all can do better, hopefully with President Trump's leadership, is do the 12 appropriations bills, and the way it should be done. But the House in this session, the last 2 years, we passed over 500 bills, and a lot of them have been good bills, but they die in the Senate. Because Harry Reid just blocked things for the president, so it never made it to his desk because of the filibuster rule. It takes 60 senators to move anything, and now we're still in that situation. They can still filibuster any law that they want. Yeah, it's even worse because there's only 51 Republican senators now. It's like we passed a lot of bills. We did a lot of work the House has over the last 2 years that you don't hear about because most of it didn't become law.
Sure.
Because it never made it to the president's desk. Not that he probably would have signed most of them anyway. Yeah. But we did pass an Education Act. We did pass a highway transportation or surface transportation bill. And, we did some good things there in the last 2 years, considering how divided it all was.
Last question here. With a lot of committee positions and seniority still being so central and bringing a lot of legislation to the floor, where a lot of these bills just end up dying in committee, do you think that you and the Freedom Caucus would plan on pushing for more procedural reforms to the way that Congress operates? And what are some procedural changes you'd like to see be made still?
Yeah, see, I'm not sure. I've been gone for the Freedom Caucus has held a couple meetings telephonically since I've been back in Iowa that I haven't had time to participate in. So I don't know where they're at, but I'm sure they're probably looking at procedural changes. I'm not sure which ones though. But I know one that sounds like it has appeal to me is letting the committees pick who their chair is versus having leadership pick who the chair of the committee is. That makes sense.
I mean, that would just make sense.
Bottom up again. That's bottom up again. This is all inside baseball stuff. I mean, every citizen doesn't care about this, but
well, I'm a nerd, so don't worry about that.
So let the committee, the members in the committee, pick who their chair is, and leadership today picks who the chair is. So I think that'd be a good change. I think that has merit. I like to listen to their side, see why they say it doesn't have merit. But on the surface, in Washington D.C., the committee's leadership, a lot of it's seniority based. Yeah. How long you have been there, and I don't know how we change that, but personally, it's something. People like myself who are accomplished outside of government. I mean, I'd like to be able to say, I've grown businesses, I've taken them public, I've spent 30 years in the private sector. Does that count for seniority?
Yeah.
Why does it have to be seniority in the federal government? Right. Seniority in screwing things up. Seniority in spending ourselves to bankruptcy. Seniority in taking away our liberty and freedom. Well, why should that count more than somebody who has taken a company from 2 employees to 325 employees? So I would like to, this whole seniority system. I don't know how we do it exactly, but I like to see it go away and let people I like fresh ideas. I like fresh blood. That's why I believe in term limits. I'm absolutely convinced we need term limits, and one of the first things we'll do is reintroduce a bill for a constitutional amendment for term limits as soon as we get back.
Sounds good. Anyway, everybody, this has been Congressman Rod Blum.
Subscribe to the Liberty Mill on YouTube and Facebook.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much, Congressman.
Sure.
Really appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey everybody, it's Timothy here as always. I know it's been a little while since I posted my last video, and in fact this interview with Rod Blum was recorded about a month ago. It's taken a little while to get up, mostly because I've been working on a brand new show concept that I think that you guys are going to be really happy about, and I think especially people who are really into political documentaries or books are going to enjoy it quite a bit. If you haven't read it already, I would encourage you to read the book The Declaration of Independence by Nick Gillespie and Matt Welch. More info is coming tomorrow, so stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching my latest video. Be sure to give it a thumbs up and a like on YouTube and Facebook, and share it with your friends on social media to help get the word out. Also, if you want to make sure that you never miss another video, you can subscribe to my YouTube or like my Facebook page and get new video notifications by clicking that little bell on YouTube or by hovering over the like button on Facebook. Thanks again.
Sure, you're doing a good job. You're out there working, asking the tough questions in the back seats of SUVs.
That's right.
The major media is never going to do that.